This video is intended to introduce the spreadsheet that I've developed for tracking students with a series of different tests. It's relatively simple to use, but it is quite powerful in what it can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate what it does, and then I'll explain how you use it. It can track the progress of up to 40 students over 10 different tests, and the information is presented to you in a variety of different ways. There are some instructions which I'll mention later on. We can view our information by a class, so we can see each of our different students, how they performed in each of their different tests, and their calculated average grades. This is also doing a comparison to target grades, where the colours are worked out automatically as to whether they have met their target grade or are still a ways off them in each of those different tests. We can view by student, where we've got each of the different tests presented down here with each of the questions and how they performed on each of those different questions, which I'll explain a bit more in detail. We can see all of their results in one go. We can see a little graph to demonstrate their progress. And of course, we can select for different students and everything will recalculate accordingly. There are 10 different test sheets for each of the different tests, where we enter the name, what the question is all about, and all of these represent the scores for each student for each question. The colours are calculated automatically, and these are calculated by looking at the maximum mark for each of the different questions, and then it will work out what colour it should do. Dark green, like this, is full marks for that particular question. Red is, of course, 0, and then there's a graduated scale through red, orange, yellow, all the way up to green, to explain how well they've done on a particular question. And then there is a feedback sheet available for each student for you to be able to communicate with that student. So rather than just saying you got 55%, you can actually have more of a conversation. The student will be able to see each of the questions, what they were about, the maximum marks, what they scored, with a slightly simpler scale, just going through green for full marks, red for 0 marks, yellow is 50% and above, and this orangey colour is less than 50%. You can then, as a teacher, you can highlight different questions that they should be looking at with a simple drop down, and then there's a lot of information presented up here. We've got their target grade that you've entered, you've got their total score for a particular question, what it was out of, and then their calculated percentage, and obviously their grade. This is all calculated off grade boundaries that you enter. And then there's a class score. So this is if you took the best score for a particular question that anybody in the class scored and added all of those up. Essentially, if the whole class were able to work together, what would they have got? And this, of course, engenders some very interesting discussions with the class about what they know and what they don't know, what's been taught to them and what they're still to learn or are very unclear of. And obviously, this can help you as a teacher to work out what you need to be focusing on a little bit more. So that's what it does. Of course, we can click back and we can look at each of these. Each of these sheets can be printed out. You'll see there's a page number reference for each of the different pages. So if I just wanted to print out Neville Longbottoms, I would just want to print out page 4, and I can then go to print. There's that one. Let's select page number 4 in the box at the bottom. And there's Neville Longbottoms. And of course, we can print out just that one or the first 15 if we want to print out a whole class set. And it's obviously very useful to be able to have a conversation with a student where we can actually make some comments, write some information about things they may want to think about or revision work in each of those different sections. Each of these student overviews and class overviews can be very useful to print out for parents' evenings and so on, or to speak to your head of department about and demonstrate how a particular class is progressing. Okay, so that's what it does, and I'll now talk a little bit about how you use it. I'll just bring up a blank copy. So we've got the instruction sheet, and I'll add a link to this video into this instruction sheet once it's uploaded. And for each of the different pages, what you've got is a written description of what that sheet should do, and then, of course, how you do it. And I'll demonstrate how each of those are done as we go through them. So when you have your blank sheet, of course, it looks something like this. This is just the class overview, and you work through them from left to right as you go through the year. The basic principle is if a cell is grey, you can't do anything to it. If I try and type in it, says it's protected. If it's white, you can, of course, change things. And, of course, what we can do is just enter all the information here. So let's call this group Year 10 Set B. And we can then just put in the student names. And, of course, we can go through each of them like that. I'm just going to cheat and copy some more in from elsewhere. There we go. And then we can put our target grade in. Now, this is a drop-down menu. So you can put any of the number grades or letter grades that you would usually find in there. So let's say we've got a target grade of a grade 6, or maybe a target grade of C. Of course, you can type them in as well. And then let's just copy some more of those in so that we've got them there. And that's all you need to do on that sheet. Everything else will get entered for you as you're going along. The student overview sheet, nothing to enter on here at all. When you're looking at it, of course, you can look on your drop-down menu, just scrolling up to the top. There are those names that we've entered for the class overview sheet. Now, on an individual test, what, of course, you need to do is you need to give it a name. So let's call this one September 10th, I don't know, whatever you want to call your name. You can then put your question numbers in. So there's some question numbers, question number 1 to 5. Of course, you could put them to A, to B, whatever you need to do. Put in your topics. Maybe we've had a question on graphs, one on circles, one on terminology, another one on data, and another one on equations. Now, you can be as specific as you want, and all this information will appear for the student, so they know what the topic is. We do then need to give a maximum mark for each question, so let's do this one now, 3 and 4 and 3 and what are we doing? 6 and 8. And then the other information that we need to enter is, as we go across, we need to add some grade boundaries. Now, these are total marks. This is this particular test. We've got quite a few questions there, so maybe our grade boundaries are going to be I don't know, 3 for an E, and 5, 7, 9. Let's do something like that. Okay, and you can change the grades to being number grades if you prefer, and you can fill up the white table. That's absolutely fine. And then what you would do is, for each individual student, you would write down how many they got for that particular question. So Harry on the first one got 3, which is full marks, so it shades it in green. On the second question, maybe he got 2, which is half marks, so it's changing that colour. And of course, we can add each of these in. Didn't do too well on that question, but nearly full marks in that one. And you can see that the colours change as you go through these, and you enter them all in for the different students. It will work out the class average on a particular question. So as we add some more in, let's add some into this that Harry's not done very well on. Okay, so we can see that from the coloration that's going on, the class have generally done pretty well on that particular question. But if we take this one that's been not done very well, obviously we can identify that simply by looking at the colour, which can then inform us as teachers to exactly how our class is performing. So it's very useful in that way to help you to plan your teaching. Fill all of that out, of course, and then we can go to our feedback sheet. So this is the feedback for test A. And we've got those names appearing in there now, and of course we can just click on any of those to add our feedback. And then all we need to do is we just need to say, okay, well, that one wasn't done very well. It's got a slightly simpler coloration system here, of course. Green is simply 100%, red would be 0%, yellow is between 50 and 99%, and this orangey colour is between 1 and 49%. It's all given here for the students. And you might then want to tell Harry, okay, well, you need to look at those two questions. They're the ones to revise. And then, of course, you write in your comment for him. So, Harry, you have performed much better than usual, but you do need to concentrate on data. I will give you a revision sheet. Okay, you can give as much information as possible there. And then everything else is just printing out the various sections that you need. It does take a little while to fill out all this information, but investing that extra little bit of time into the feedback that you're providing for the students, of course, is more beneficial for them to help them with all of their information. You can see, help them with all their revision and preparing for future things. You can see, of course, each of these calculations are now appearing in there. And if we go back to our student overview, and we go to, Hermione's only got the one in there. We go to Harry or something like that. Now you'll see there's nothing appearing in test B. That's simply because we didn't enter all the other information, all the question numbers and so on. But that's all in there. And we can look at our class overview and we can see that. And again, the stuff for test B and C, where we are adding in those extra questions, will appear once you add in all the other information. We can see that we've got the name and the class average and everything appearing now. The colours, this is representing, of course, that Hermione... Sorry, not test B. I'm talking about the other questions for the other students. They of course, haven't got all their information in. If Hermione has a target grade of an A star, she's currently on a D, of course, she's 4 below her target grade. And if Harry is on a C, and this one he got an A star, of course, he's 3 above his target grade. So it's giving you that quick feedback. Obviously, this is not representative data. Okay, hopefully that's very useful. I do have a smaller version of the spreadsheet that I'll make available on the TES as well, which will just look at one test and provide feedback if you just wanted to look at one test rather than all of them in one go. But this is probably more useful if you are investing the time with your class to see how they're progressing over time. Hopefully it's useful. And I'll provide all links in the bottom to where this resource can be found in the little description underneath the video. Basically, it's on the TES resource website, and I'll provide a link. Okay, hope it's useful.